As a government employee, you have to make one of the most important financial decisions, which is whether you should retire or resign from GEPF. Now, perhaps you know of members who've opted to retire and they've passed away a short while afterwards. And you know there's a fortune of money that gets left behind to GEPF in that case, and that concerns you. On the other end, you have resignation. But you know of members who've lost millions of rands in tax and investing in the markets, and you're afraid of that happening too. Now, in this video, I'm going to guide you on 3 secrets that you can use right now in order to take more control of that situation. But before I get started, I just want to highlight how significant or how deep this problem is. Now, I need to give you a word of warning. The information I'm about to share with you is going to be alarming to you. It's going to be surprising and overwhelming, and it's going to make you feel afraid. But I need you to take that journey in order for you to understand how serious this decision is, the impact of making a wrong decision. So if you're ready to get started, keep watching. Now, imagine if I said to you, here's a stove, and this stove is extremely hot, and I said, please don't touch it. If you touch it, your hands are going to get burnt. Now, my question is, if you still opt to touch it, even though I've told you this stove is hot, but you still choose to touch it, my question is, you end up getting burnt. Is it fair? Is it fair that you are burnt and now you're having to deal with the consequence of it? So you're being rushed over to hospital, or maybe you need to have some skin grafting on, some type of medical procedure. Is it fair? Now keep that theme in mind because I'm going to circle back to that shortly. Now, I host members in a Retire vs. Resign Masterclass in which we compare both options, retirement and resignation. And I want to do a quick summary for you on the differences of the two. Now, right now, you might believe that your gratuity equals a 1/3 lump sum. And I'm going to show you in this calculation that it's not the case. You can see from this brief calculation here, the member should be getting 1.7 million, which is the resignation value of 5.1 million divided by 3. It should be 1.7. But the gratuity value is less. It's 1.2. Now there's a difference between the two. And that difference is what I refer to as your cost of retirement. Now, everything that I'm doing in this video applies to this particular member. You'd have to get these calculations done for you, but use it as a framework so you have an understanding as to how this works. What it means is this member would lose 448,980 Rand if this member opted to retire. And that happens on day 1. So the first day of retirement, because the 1/3 value is not a true 1/3 value, the member already is in a bit of a disadvantaged position. Now let's take it a step further. We now have to calculate the tax on that lump sum gratuity. So we know the gratuity amount sits at 1.2 million. Tax is worked according to this tax table. Now you want to make sure you're working with the latest tax guide. This is the tax table that I've used, or that was accurate at the time of creating this video. And you see the first 500,000 is tax-free, but as you move higher up, the scale starts to increase. So it goes from 0% tax to 18 to 27 to 36. Now here's a quick calculation here on the 1.2 million, but it means that the total tax now is 205,000. So 205,250 Rand is taken by SARS for tax on this. Now, I want to take this a step further. If you look at the monthly pension here, so the monthly income, it's 28,386 Rand. Now I want to have a look at what would be the tax of that income. So if you look at it as a 60-year-old, in my example, 28,386 in tax, you can see 4,504 Rand monthly, 54,059 Rand is the annual tax. So that's the tax for the year. Now, my next step is I want to figure out over the next 5-year period, what is the tax? So I'm taking the annual tax that I just showed you, the 54,000 times 5 to give me a 5-year period. And I also want to see the tax on the gratuity. I'm adding the two up to give you an idea. That's 475,547 Rand. That's just the tax for the first 5 years had this member opted, or if this member opted to retire. Now remember, you want to do the same calculation for yourself in order to determine this. Moving on, the next question I want you to ask is, can your family survive with half your income? So right now, if your family had to have half the income that you are bringing home, can they survive? Can they live the same life? And the reason I'm asking that is, remember, if this member had retired, and if you opt to retire and you end up passing away shortly afterwards, your spouse gets 50%. Now you want to see, is your spouse able to manage with that now? Now, if your spouse can't manage with it right now, how would they manage with it at that time in the future? The next thing is, what if you don't have a spouse, or you and your spouse pass away within the 5 years? Now, I want to do a calculation, and this calculation now determines how much of money actually gets paid out in the event of that happening inside of 5 years, and how much is left behind. So in this basic calculation, I'm looking at the total incomes. So the 28,000 over the next 5 years, what is that total? And when I add up all the figures, what's left behind? So I'm taking the resignation value, 5.1 million, and minusing all the monthly incomes, minusing the lump sum gratuity. What's left behind without any growth, meaning if this money had zero growth, is 2,022,809 rands. That's what's left behind. Now, if you add up the tax that got paid to that 2 million, so I'm adding the total tax, 475, plus the 2 million rand that's left behind, it's 2,498,000 that this member is losing out on. See? It's 2,498,000, almost 2.5 million. Now, what could you do with that amount of money? On the flip side, what happens if you opt to resign? So if this member opted to resign, we now have to do a tax calculation on the 5.1 million. Same tax table applies, but this time the value is a lot higher, which means the tax becomes higher. It's now sitting at 1,595,000. That's almost 1.6 million is lost in tax. So comparing the two options, retirement, there's a potential loss for this member of almost 2.5 million. Resignation, potential loss of almost 1.6 million before we even talk about markets. That's just on tax alone. My question to you is it fair? Is it fair of SARS to do this? Is it fair of GEPF to do this? And I'm saying to you, it is. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is if we circle back to the beginning, when I asked you the question, if I tell you that the stove is hot, and would you put your hand there? And if you still do, you're going to have the consequence. So you're going to suffer the consequence because you're still putting your hand on something that is hot. So how does it relate to the situation we have right now? If you look at the tax guide, so I'll put up the latest tax guide here. Now, you want to make sure that you have the latest tax guide when you're working with this. The tax guide that you're seeing in front of me is the 2022 tax guide. You can see in advance, SARS is telling you this is how much of tax they're going to take from you based on the income that you're earning. They're telling you in advance. So it's again the stove situation. The stove is hot. If you're going to touch it, you're going to get burnt. If you're going to go on high income amounts, you're going to end up paying high tax because tax works on sliding scale. More you take, more you pay. The same applies when we look at the lump sum. So the lump sum that you get, you'll notice from 500,000, it's tax-free. And then as it moves higher up, the tax starts to become more, which means SARS is telling you this in advance. They're telling you that this is the tax that you'd pay if you opt to go that route, which means if you're still opting to go that route, they're going to tax you. They're going to tax you. And the reason why it's fair is they're being transparent and they're letting you know. And the same applies on GEPF side. So if you look at the GEPF tax guide, so we'll quickly have a look at one. On your member guide, it tells you this is what would happen based on a particular instance. So I'll quickly share that with you. But that information is provided in advance. So the member guide gives you all the information. It gives you the formulas, it gives you the calculation. So what I want to share with you is this has nothing to do with information because information is at your fingertips. See, you have access to the member guide, it's free. You have access to the SARS guide, it's free. What this is all about is how do you take that information and apply it to your set of circumstance? So how do you take information from the member guide and use it to make the right choice, retirement or resignation? How do you take the information from the SARS tax guide and use it to start saving money for you. Are you ready for the 3 secrets? Let's get going. So the first thing I want you to know is we all don't know everything. So you are a master in your profession because you've been doing it for so long. Now, if you go back and you reflect to when you first started in your career, chances are you didn't know a lot. Well, you definitely don't know what you know now. But over the years, with all the experience that you've gained, you can now probably do certain things in your sleep because it's second nature to you. But when it comes to tax, when it comes to investing and the markets, and again, making the decision between the two, chances are you don't know everything. It's going to take some time. It's taken me over 15 years to get the knowledge that I have. So the first step that you want to do here is you want to understand that. You want to respect that you won't know everything. But what's the next step? The next step is you now need to get to someone. This is your shortcut. You want to get to someone who knows it all. See, who knows enough information. So this is a GEPF specialist, someone who understands GEPF, who understands the rules, who also has a proven track record of having worked with government employees before and provided successful solutions. Now, you don't just want someone who knows information about insurance policies or basic financial planning, because they may not know about how GEPF operates. And if they make a mistake, this again is going to fall to you because the stove is hot. If the stove is hot and you're choosing to touch it, and that's a mistake, and obviously you'll suffer the consequence. So by not using someone who understands GEPF, this is where a lot of members went astray. And I'll guide you as we go along, how do we adjust this? Now, why a specialist? Let's assume that you needed heart surgery. So you wanted heart surgery. Would you go to a GP to have a heart operation completed, or would you go to a cardiologist? Chances are the GP can offer you some sort of guidance, but the cardiologist is a specialist in that field when it relates to the heart. Working with us all the time, has the right equipment, has the right tools, the right abilities to save your life, basically. And the same with a GEPF specialist, someone who has access to that knowledge, who is informed, who can create these solutions for you, can open your world to endless possibilities that retirement and resignation has to offer, particularly resignation, because you sort of know what retirement offers. Resignation is a gray area for you. It's where you want to find information on. So getting a specialist is key. Now, I know what you're saying, that it's very difficult when you're dealing with financial services, because how do you know you can trust the person? Because you generally have to invest money and you only find out in the end. And I'll share with you a secret shortly. In addition to that, maybe you've had some bad experience with a financial advisor or an insurance consultant, and it makes you reluctant. You just don't know who to trust. That's good, because I'll guide you on secret 3. How do you overcome that? Now, the next thing I wanted to guide you on, the next secret, is you have to plan to win. You have to plan to win. What do I mean by this? Well, imagine you taking part in a race. Before you take part in the race, it's a 10-kilometer race. Would you do any form of preparation? Or would you just land at the starting line on the day of the race, ready to cycle for 10 kilometers? Now, what happens if you do that? On the day of the race, if you want to cycle, if you don't have enough stamina, if you don't have the ability to get through the race, you're not going to make it to complete it. See, you're going to end up with some type of issue. Post the race, you're going to be feeling exhausted because you've now stretched your body to a limit it was not used to. How does it relate to you? Right now, you are here. I'll call it now. This is where you are at this moment. And I'm going to say X is the time when you are going to make that decision to retire or resign. Now, if you do nothing now, if you're choosing to do absolutely nothing now, at the time when you come here to X, to retire or resign, or even if you leave this for a few months before, let's just say it's 1 or 3 months before, my question to you is, are you planning to win? Because if you're leaving it for a few months before, is that enough time for you to save on tax? Is there enough time for you to compare both options? Is it enough time for you to take the full advantage that these options have available for you? So you want to plan to win. Ideally, you want to get this started right now, especially if you're watching the video, as early as possible. I would say a minimum 2-year period because you want to go to Secret 3, and Secret 3 is all about value in advance. Now, the best way for me to illustrate this is using an example, and let's just say you have 5 million Rand that's sitting inside your resignation benefit. Now, you want to know whether it's better for you to retire or resign. You're not exactly sure. But in addition to that, you definitely have some insecurities. Can you trust me with 5 million Rand of your money? Am I going to be able to do the right things for you? Yes, maybe you've seen my testimonial, so you know I've done this for other members, but am I able to do this for you? So what's the next step? My suggestion is you get your planning done a bit earlier. So getting back to here, if I put you in a position where I can start saving you tax right now, let's say I'm able to guide you on a tax saving that saves you 1,000 Rand. In addition to that, we're reviewing some of your insurance policies, and I'm just saving you between the two 1,000 Rand a month. Now, over a 12-month period, I've saved you 12,000 Rand. And imagine how much this would be at the time that you're ending up having to make your decision here. So what it means in effect is I'm building you up to a point where you're in a much more solid position at the time of you making your decision. Now, at that time, if I've proved my worth to you through this technique called value in advance, you see, I've given you value in advance. Now you can see with a small amount of money, I was able to grow this for you. I was able to save you money and reduce your taxes. Now, are you more comfortable with me managing 5 million? Because I've proven myself to you. Okay. What's the danger? If you just approach a financial advisor or consultant and hand them 5 million Rand without doing value in advance, without knowing whether they can help you in this initial period here, you run the risk now because they're going to create solutions for you, but you don't know whether those solutions are going to be working in your best interest. Okay. Now, I hope you found this video very, very insightful. If you have, post comments below and share with me which aspects has been beneficial to you. And then, do you want to make sure that the solution that you make or this decision on retiring or resigning is going to be your most appropriate decision? Well, in the link below, you'll have access to joining my Retire vs. Resign Masterclass. So click on it to have it registered. Alternatively, if you know that this is a route that you want to go, if you know that you want to be able to see how you can get the most benefits, then contact me for a private one-on-one consult, and I'll guide you in exactly how you can get the most value from it.